Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing? I wish I could be in the house of the Lord today, but I'm not feeling good. You can probably tell by the sound of my voice, but also I've got parts of my body right now that are just like aching and cracking. I guess maybe it's the change in the weather. But I really felt led of the Lord today to share something with you. Not just reading this morning in my devotions, but also in the book of Ruth. And I think it's about God's sovereignty. It's something that I have been seeing a lot of in my own life and also in things around me. As I read the book of Ruth, reading chapter 2, you see the beginnings of God's sovereignty in how God guides Ruth directly to the field of Boaz, who is a wonderful man of God, who's a gentleman in every way, and an attraction develops between the two of them, a very beautiful one. And I love how, even in the midst of the sorrow that Naomi and Ruth have experienced in losing their husbands, Naomi losing her sons and her husband, and Ruth losing her husband, she gains a mother-in-law in Naomi. And most of all, she gains a special relationship with God. And I just had to share a few things. As I was reading this morning in the book of Job, in this passage, read Job chapter 12, verses 7 through 10, but I read from back in verse 1, and you see here Job is another perfect example of God's sovereignty too, in a unique manner where Job has been put through the ringer, emotionally, physically, you name it. He's lost all his possessions, and he's lost his children. And now, last but certainly not least, his health has been affected. He has these huge boils all over him. And I don't know about you, but that would drive me nuts. I don't know if these things were itchy, but they had to be sore. And then to have your three friends, people who are your friends, who are supposed to be there to comfort you, they're far from comforting you. They're absolutely far from comforting you. They're claiming that you've done some secret evil sin, and they can't name what it is. And I love Job's response in chapter 12, how even though he's not realizing it, he's pointing out God's sovereignty. And let me read this to you, because I think it's something that we all need. In case you're wondering, that door was my husband. It's something very interesting when he responds to his three so-called friends. One of the things he says in this is how wisdom is going to die with them. Like, it's the beginning of some friends you are, if he hasn't already said that. But he says something very interesting. He says, "But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea, and shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this, whose hand is the soul of every living thing and the breath of all mankind?" I was reminded of a passage out of, I think, in Jeremiah that says, "In the blood there's life." But as Job continues with this, he says he sees something going on with the hand of the Creator in the animals of the field, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and he says he knows that God's got something going on, but he just doesn't know what. And I felt like that. I felt like Naomi. I felt like God is against me for some reason. I confess, I go to the Lord and I confess my sin to him. And I know I'm forgiven, but I still have this feeling, and then there are times when I go through something and it's not because of anything I've done, but God is showing his sovereignty to me, just like he did for Job. And I'm still frustrated. I don't know about you. And I feel like Job. I feel like I need to demand answers from God. But the thing is, we can't demand God give us anything. We have to accept his sovereignty. We have to, and that doesn't mean in any way that God is sadistic. He's not the author of evil. And he's sure as anything not obtuse to what is happening